Last time, we walked through a dark history. We saw what happened when the body was treated as the enemy, when healing meant control, and when power outran ethics. It would have been so easy for the field to close the door permanently, and in many ways, it almost did. But something refused to go away. Because even when therapy sat quietly in chairs and spoke in careful interpretations, something else was happening. Breath was shortening, shoulders were tightening, and hands were trembling. Eyes were filling with tears before the story caught up. The body was still participating. The leap forward didn't come from rebellion, it came from observation. Clinicians began to notice something radical and simple. When a person finally took a deep breath, something changed. When their jaw softened, something changed. When their body completed a movement it had frozen in, something changed. The leap wasn't from mind to body. It was from controlling the body to listening to it. Wilhelm Reich came from a terrible childhood trauma, packed with guilt. This in part drove him toward psychoanalysis, where he became one of Freud's brightest proteges. He observed that many patients would gain insight, but that their symptoms would persist. His essential insight was groundbreaking. The body is not just influenced by the psyche, it is the psyche organized in flesh. His own early losses likely sensitized him to how unbearable emotion becomes embodied. When Wilhelm Reich began tracking breath and muscular tension, he made an extraordinary discovery. Defenses are not just ideas, they are held in the flesh. A tight diaphragm, a collapsed chest, shoulders up around the ears. He called it armor. Therapy didn't just try to interpret the armor, it tried to soften it. People felt alive, and yet it was early. The body had returned, but we did not fully understand the nervous system. We sought catharsis, pounding on pillows and the backs of couches, which for some led to being overwhelmed without any real change. Alexander Lowen became a patient of Reich's after a childhood filled with shame and powerlessness. So you're getting a sense of Freud to Reich, Reich to Lowen, a transition from almost father to son, in a sense. He achieved profound release working under Reich and Reich's body armor. But later, Alexander Lowen expanded this into bioenergetics, inviting people to ground their feet, deepen their breath, and allow their bodies to move. There was vitality in this work, and with his emphasis on grounding, somatic therapy took a crucial first step toward containment, making the work safer for people. As the decades rolled on, trauma science continued to mature as we learned more and more about biology. As we began to understand fight, flight, freeze, not as metaphors, but as biological realities. And then came Peter Levine. Levine shifted the question. Instead of asking, how do we break through this armor? He asked, how do we help the nervous system complete what it needed to finish? That changed everything. Healing no longer meant just catharsis and beating the pillow. Expanded beyond simply grounding and getting centered. It meant capacity And we build capacity slowly in order to be safe. Not only do we ground, we also titrate. That means that we touch the outskirts of the distress and then we sit back, we recover. We do not plunge immediately into the deep end of the pool. Small tremors instead of giant releases, micro movements instead of explosions, titration instead of overwhelm. The body was not a bomb to diffuse. It was an organism trying to survive. And survival strategies deserve respect. Then the field deepened even further as, again, we continued to learn, now in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Pat Ogden began as a yoga teacher and body worker in the 1970s. She was immersed in mindfulness, movement, and somatic awareness before formal psychotherapy training began. When she was working at a psychiatric hospital, she noticed something striking. People would talk about trauma, but their bodies told a different story. And when she gently invited attention to these physical patterns, striking, powerful shifts occurred. More often quickly than through narrative exploration alone. Her training in Hakomi, as well as Levine's work, asked her and led her to integrate somatics with attachment theory and relational neuroscience. And she would also teach her students to track themselves as well. Are they sitting forward in a crumpled up, disempowered position, or are they letting themselves sit back in strength, becoming centered and more regulated themselves, so that there was more of an opportunity for co-regulation? Now the question wasn't just what's happening in the body, but what is happening between us. Because regulation does not occur in isolation, it occurs in relationship. The therapist's nervous system matters, pacing matters, power matters. Somatic therapy matured. It became slower, more careful, more collaborative, not less powerful, more responsible and mutually responsive, more connected. Here's what is hopeful. Today, we understand that trauma is not weakness, it is adaptation. We understand that shaking after danger is not pathology, it is completion. We understand that a held breath may once have saved a life. And when that final breath releases, what often follows is not trauma. It is relief, the quiet kind, a deep inhale, a steadier gaze, and feet that feel the floor. And sometimes something even simpler, joy, not performative joy, not manic intensity, but the ordinary joy of inhabiting your own body with confidence. And that the joy is the direct counter to the rampant loneliness in which so many of us are drowning as we find our way to a deep heart connection with others. This is where somatic therapy at its best is now. It does not overpower. It does not force expression. It does not chase catharsis. It restores choice. And when choice returns, vitality grows. And I'm so excited as we continue to learn more and more about our biology and about how our bodies hold mental well-being and mental illness. We will continue to see better and better somatic therapy practices. In the next video, this story gets personal. I'll share my own journey as a somatic therapist. Until then, peace.